Imagine traversing a forest so ancient and dark that even the birds forget to sing. In the heart of Mirkwood, where time seems to stand still, a grey-hatted wizard rides alone, carrying secrets that could save or destroy all Middle-earth. Gandalf feels the weight of something unseen, rumors of a Necromancer, an ancient power reborn in the ruins of Dol Guldur. But what he finds there is beyond any nightmare. Maddened dwarves, divided elf kings, secret councils, and a shadow few dare name, Sauron. It is in this setting that the improbable happens. From the comfort of the Shire, Bilbo Baggins, a quiet hobbit, emerges, called to a destiny he himself could never have imagined. Alongside heroes like Thorin Oakenshield, Galadriel and Elrond, the fight against evil transforms into an epic journey where courage and hope are tested at every turn. But answer me, have you ever wondered if a small decision made by an ordinary person could change the course of everything? Where are you watching? Now, and what time is it there? Tell me in the comments. I want to know where this story will lead. And if you enjoy immersing yourself in epic adventures full of mysteries, battles, and unforgettable characters, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This really helps spread this spark of curiosity and motivates us to bring you more stories like this. Mirkwood Twilight, the Call of Silence. There was a time when the leaves of Mirkwood danced in the wind, letting in the golden sunlight, as if the entire forest were made of music, hope and warmth. It was known as the Greenwood, and here elves sang fearlessly, birds nested among shining branches, and even the simplest animals walked peacefully beneath the sky. But that memory was now like a faded dream, driven away by the cold hand of time and forgotten in the corners of memory. For what once shone in celebration now lay in shadow. As night began to fall over Middle-earth, Mirkwood seemed to hold its breath. Not a leaf stirred, not a bird sang. The wind, which had once whispered secrets, seemed to have fled, frightened by something invisible and terrible that filled the air. It was as if even time itself feared moving forward, and everything there waited, or feared, for the next step. And amidst this stony silence, a single figure advanced, almost unnoticed. An old wizard in a pointy hat and grey cloak, mounted on a horse with restless eyes. Gandalf the Grey followed the ancient path, each step of his horse. Echoing loudly in the darkness of the trees, his gaze roamed the dark trunks and thick roots that spread like ghostly fingers across the ground. He had traversed many strange and dangerous places, but here, even for a wizard, everything seemed wrong. The forest was sick, taken by an evil no one saw, but all felt. The trees bent, heavy with secrets. The shadows took shape, as if closely watching the intruder's every move. Gandalf could feel the fear pulsing around him. It wasn't fear of beasts or hunters, but of something ancient, a dark foreboding that echoed from the depths of the earth to the tops of the canopy. Mirkwood had been filled with a nameless shadow. The air was thick, heavy, and even the horse seemed to want to retreat, its ears flattening as if listening to distant voices. Gandalf himself, accustomed to challenges and mysteries, kept his hand firmly on his staff and his senses heightened, ready for any surprise. Why do even the birds fall silent? That was the question. Lingering in his thoughts, the absolute silence was the strangest of all. Not even the chirping of a cricket, the rustling of a squirrel in the branches, not even the beating of wings in the twilight could be heard. Only the muffled sound of footsteps and the old wizard's pent-up breathing filled the void. That forest, once alive and full of stories, now seemed like a gigantic tomb, and every tree a tombstone, a mute witness to something terrible and recent. What had turned Greenwood into a living tomb? The simple folk of the nearby villages murmured of creatures coming out at night, of eyes glowing between the tree trunks, and voices whispering in forgotten tongues. The elves who once glided lightly and proudly along the paths now closed the gates of their halls before nightfall. Something horrific had taken possession of the heart of the wood, and not even the wisest dared name the threat. Gandalf, however, was driven by another force, the need to know the truth. He sensed that the fate of many depended on what he would find there, on that silent crossing with only the stars as witnesses. As he walked forward, he remembered the days when Greenwood had been pure joy. But now, each step forward was a plunge into the unknown. The wizard knew no one would come to his aid if something went wrong. Here, he was just another lost traveler, and yet he was the only one with the courage to move forward when even owls preferred to hide. Walking beneath the trees of Mirkwood, that night was like walking on a frozen lake. Every crack of a twig could herald a hidden danger. Gandalf felt the eyes of the forest upon him, assessing, testing, waiting for the slightest sign of weakness. But it was also there, in complete solitude, that true courage was born. For courage is not the absence of fear, but the gift of carrying on despite it. And so, alone, Gandalf penetrated ever deeper into the dark heart of Mirkwood, feeling the weight of all the unseen gazes and the call of an ancient secret hidden in the roots and darkness. Perhaps therein lay the key to saving not only the forest, but all of Middle-earth. Or perhaps Gandalf himself would become just another echo lost among the trees. As the wizard advances in absolute silence, I invite you who are following this journey to share. Where are you watching or listening to this story from? Are you listening in the middle of the night, in the silence of the night, or in the warmth of a quiet afternoon? Tell us your location and time in the comments. Perhaps the shadows of Mirkwood are lurking around there too. And it was precisely in this setting, where all is silence, fear, and shadow, that Gandalf perceived the first signs of what would become the greatest of mysteries, the presence of an evil that not only hides, but lurks, ready to devour everything around it. Something awaited him beyond what the eyes could see, beyond what the brave dared to imagine. The Necromancer and the secret of Dol Guldur. The darkness in Mirkwood wasn't just a lack of light. There was a chill rising from the earth, a whisper of something growing silently beneath the roots and behind the trees. To anyone looking from the outside, it was just an old, sickly forest. But Gandalf, riding intently along those forgotten paths, sensed something more. A buried secret, the kind that silences even the winds. The rumors were like fragments of a nightmare scattered on the wind. Villages vanishing as they approached the south. Animals found dead and strange, shadows lengthening even at midday, a sense that someone's or something's eyes were watching every inch of the forest. Wherever he went, Gandalf heard stories whispered between clenched teeth. No one dared speak aloud, as if words might awaken what lurked in the heart of the woods. "It's the Necromancer," some said, barely moving their lips, looking around. Others didn't even dare say the name, simply making the lucky sign or changing the subject. Dol Guldur was the name of the fortress, built on a hill like an open wound, from where its very shadow seemed to drip down the trunks and branches. They said no one returned from there, and those who saw the distant towers, shrouded in mist, felt a weight on their chest, as if time stood still just to hear the silence. But there was something even more frightening. Rumors that the shadow there was not just any sorcerer, but an ancient power, a name forgotten in the songs of elves and feared in the histories of men. Sauron, the Dark Lord, who had threatened the world in ages past. Now the name began to return, but only in the most timid whispers, as if even the wisest feared giving form to evil simply through the power of words. There was a name no wise man dared speak. Thus Gandalf described to himself the tension that hung in every village, in every frightened look. The fear here was different. It wasn't like fearing a beast on the road. It was like fearing the night itself, the fear of Something unseen but felt, and the wizard knew. The terror of the unseen is the hardest to combat, for the imagination fills with even greater monsters what the eyes cannot reach. As he advanced, Gandalf also remembered the ancient councils. The White Council, assembled long ago, debated whether the Necromancer was a real threat or merely a lesser spectre, something that would soon vanish. But the wizard, observing the growing strength of fear among elves, dwarves, and men, felt it was not time to underestimate the enemy. If there was even a chance it was Sauron, Middle-earth faced a danger capable of awakening all the ancient terrors. Deep down, there was another reason for such concern. Rumors that someone, or something, was imprisoned in the dungeons of Dol Guldur, an important prisoner perhaps possessing secrets capable of changing the course of the war, should there be one. Gandalf had heard of a missing dwarf king, someone possessing maps and keys of incalculable value, guardians of lost pasts and uncertain futures. The questions lingered. Who was this prisoner? Why keep him alive? What dangerous knowledge did he carry? What was the necromancer searching for so desperately, locked away in the bowels of the fortress? The mood of suspense and anticipation only grew as Gandalf approached Dol Guldur. Even the branches seemed to try to impede him, forming barriers of roots and shadows. The fear of the unseen, of a power growing faceless only felt, was suffocating. There were no troops marching, no monsters in sight, but the forest breathed a threat that seemed greater than 1,000 armies. The silence was the enemy's scream. Deep down, Gandalf sensed that there, in this heart of darkness, lay the beginning of something far greater than he could even imagine. It was as if all Middle-earth was waiting for someone, finally, to dare to go to the last shadow and bring the truth to light. Now tell me, if you were in Gandalf's shoes, would you have the courage to continue? In the face of a danger no one can see, only feel. And taking advantage of this suspenseful atmosphere, tell me where you're watching or listening to this story from and what time it is where you are. Could the shadow of Dol Guldur also haunt your city or your night? As Gandalf prepared to face the secret growing in the heart of the forest, the whisper of the forbidden name continued to echo on the wind, as if everything were about to change. But behind the stone walls and mists, something else awaited him, ready to test the courage of those who dare to challenge the unseen, the fortress that breathes darkness. After traversing the dark heart of Mirkwood, Gandalf finally glimpses, through the trees, the menacing outline of Dol Guldur. It's not just an ancient structure, it's a gaping wound in the landscape, as if the land itself has been corrupted and rises in pain and defiance. The wizard pauses for a moment atop a hill, watches in silence, and senses in the heavy air the breath of an evil that never sleeps. The fortress seems alive, made of stone, yet pulsing with malice. Its towers are sharp claws that scratch the sky, and the walls covered in dark moss seem to guard every secret with clenched teeth. The fog creeps lazily over the ruins, like a veil that never lets the sun shine through. It's as if the entire place were designed to keep away anyone or anything that approaches uninvited. The silence, once eerie, here becomes unbearable. Even the wind avoids passing over. Dol Guldur. No bird flies above the towers, no insect dares to make a sound in the crevices of the stones. The smell is damp, a mixture of sodden earth, rotting leaves, and a faint odor of something forgotten, a scent of captivity, of secrets kept for centuries. Gandalf dismounts, whispering reassurances to his horse, which neighs nervously and refuses to move forward. The wizard knows he is now alone. He takes a deep breath, adjusts his hat, grips his staff tightly, and feels the tension course through his body. Each step he takes toward the fortress echoes like a challenge to the darkness itself. as if, with each movement, he tests not only his courage, but the hidden power that dwells within. Advancing among the jagged stones, Gandalf feels the fortress's invisible gaze upon him, as if the building had eyes of its own, alert for any intruder. The shadows of the towers cast strange shapes on the ground, and at every turn something seems to move too quickly to be seen, escaping from view, but leaving behind a sense of hostile presence. The wizard glides along the sides of the walls, alert, almost holding his breath to avoid attracting attention. His instinct tells him there are eyes watching from every corner. He soon realizes he cannot enter through the main gates. Only death awaits him there. So he examines the slime-covered walls and, after patiently searching, discovers a narrow crevice between stones and roots, hidden by time and the very evil of the place. A narrow, dark corridor, suffocated by mold and the feeling that something or someone has tried to escape from there before. Even so, Gandalf doesn't hesitate. He doubles over, holds his breath, and squeezes through the passage, plunging into the darkness, as if crossing the threshold between two worlds. Inside, Dol Guldur is even worse than outside. The walls exude cold and resentment. The slippery floor seems intent on knocking down anyone who passes by, and small chains hang from the ceiling, some still, tinkling with a sound reminiscent of ancient laments. Blue lights, the fruit of some forgotten magic or a power that defies nature, illuminate the corridor with sudden flashes, creating a spectacle of dancing shadows that confuse the senses. The smell of decay mingles with that of dark magic, an aura that sends a chill down the wizard's spine. The sound of Gandalf's own footsteps is muffled, but each tap of his staff echoes like thunder in the silence, a reminder that he is challenging a power greater than anything the eye can see. Here, every decision is a gamble. The mage feels he's walking not just through the corridors of a fortress, but along the edge of an abyss. One false step could be fatal. Even so, he presses on, driven by the courage of someone who knows there are things that need to be done, and that often no one else dares to attempt them. The danger is real, but the desire to uncover the secret hidden within is greater. At every turn in the corridor, the tension mounts. Behind each rusted door lies a monster, a spell, or simply the emptiness of centuries of suffering. The walls seem to press in, as if trying to crush any curious visitor. Yet Gandalf does not back down. His purpose is stronger than his fear. Picture the scene, mist swirling across the ground, magical lights casting shadows on the walls, and a lone wizard, armed only with a staff and his own courage, exploring the depths of Middle-earth's darkest depths. It's a scene worthy of a nightmare, or a grand adventure. What about you? Have you ever found yourself somewhere where even the silence seems to want to expel you? Share in the comments where you're following this story from and what time it is there in this dark moment. Perhaps your night is brighter than the ruins of Dol Guldur, or perhaps you too sense secrets hidden in the shadows around you. In the damp, icy darkness, Gandalf senses that the true challenge is yet to come. For not all dangers are visible, and sometimes the greatest of them lurks just beyond the next door. As he approaches the depths of the fortress, something far beyond his imagination begins to reveal itself, ready to test the very limits of his courage. The prisoner of the abyss. In the icy heart of Dol Guldur, where even light seems to refuse to enter, Gandalf advances through the damp, winding corridors. The smell of wet stone mingles with that of something indefinable, an ancient odor of suffering, hidden within the walls as if the stones have learned to weep in silence. The sounds of his footsteps are swallowed by the darkness, and the sensation is that each step takes him further away from the world of the living and closer to the abyss. Descending deeper, Gandalf realizes that there, in the forgotten depths, time no longer exists. There is no night or day, only the constant cold, the slow drip of water into dirty puddles, and the creaking of hanging chains. Here, there is no hope, only waiting. Waiting for an unlikely rescue or a silent end. It is then, amidst the corridor of cells, that Gandalf feels a strange call, a barely perceptible whisper, like the echo of a memory. He approaches a heavy, rusted door from which escapes a hoarse sound, the breathing of someone between life and death. Inside the cell, huddled like a wounded animal, is Thráin II, the former king of the dwarves of Erebor. But what Gandalf finds is no longer the proud ruler of the stories, but a spectre, a body worn from captivity, empty eyes and a dirty beard, mixed with the dried blood of old wounds. The shock is immediate, a king's voice reduced to whispers of madness. This is the image that remains etched in Gandalf's mind. The wizard approaches slowly, calls his name, and for a moment it seems Thráin doesn't recognize anything, not even himself. Only when Gandalf touches the dwarf's hand does he react, eyes wide, confused, trying to distinguish his friend from the nightmare. Thráin mutters incoherent words. He speaks of maps, keys, a mountain that needs saving. He speaks of the enemy, the faceless one who watches all, and of a stolen secret. Amidst his delirium, the truth begins to emerge. The Necromancer, the master of Dol Guldur, took from him what was most valuable: the map and the key to Erebor, the secret entrance to the ancient dwarven kingdom. It was not force alone that brought Thráin to the bottom of the abyss, but rather a cold, calculated strategy that sought much more than gold or raw power. The enemy wanted control, wanted to use the key to open doors to destruction. The dwarf's desperation is palpable. He clutches the iron bar, eyes filled with tears and rage, trying to plead, to warn, perhaps even to apologize for not having resisted longer. His words are interrupted by coughing fits and pains he no longer feels. He speaks of his people, of his lost son, of a hope that fades with each passing minute in the enemy's dungeons. With each sentence, Gandalf feels the weight of urgency grow. This isn't just a rescue. It's a race against time, against the foretold tragedy. Empathy explodes in the hearts of those watching. The image of that destroyed king, once a source of pride and strength for an entire lineage, now reduced to a shadow of his own, is heartbreaking. There, deep in that cell, what exists is the pain of all who have lost something too precious to be recovered. What is felt is powerlessness in the face of a cruel fate, but also the spark of hope that insists on not dying. For a brief moment, Gandalf and Thráin share the silence of those who know the fight is only beginning. Between whispers, the dwarf reveals the name of his tormentor, and fear materializes in the heavy air. He has returned. Sauron has returned, and he knows of Erebor. The mere mention of the Dark Lord transforms the chill of the corridor into a frost on the soul. This was not just a personal struggle, not just a dwarven kingdom threatened. The fate of all Middle-earth was now tied to the secret, wrested from Thráin in the depths of Dol Guldur. At that moment, a piercing scream pierces the darkness, coming from somewhere above, as if evil itself knows a secret has just been revealed. Gandalf knows there is no more time. Danger looms, and every second is a battle against the inevitable. Tragedy looms, but hope, however faint, gains a new spark. The revelation of that prisoner may be the key to saving all free peoples, or plunging them into ultimate darkness. Have you ever witnessed a story where a single revelation changed the course of everything? Share in the comments where you're watching or listening to this story, and what time it is in your city right now. Is it daytime? Or does your night also carry echoes of loss and untold secrets? Deep within that dungeon, the past and future of Middle-earth met in silence. And as the halls of Dol Guldur began to vibrate with the approach of something even darker, Gandalf prepared to face not only the stone shadows, but the Dark Lord himself, for the worst was yet to come. A voz nas sombras. The echo of Thráin's last scream still lingered in the corridors when Gandalf felt a sudden shift in the air. It was as if the fortress itself held its breath, waiting for the next move. A cold wave coursed across the floor, and the shadows on the walls began to move, as if with a will of their own. It was the arrival of something unlike anything that had ever inhabited these halls, something that needed no form to strike fear. Gandalf stood, staff in hand, looking around, alert for any sign. Then an invisible presence filled the corridor, denser than the darkness, colder than winter's ice. There was no sound of footsteps, no creak of a door, only a living shadow, an oppressive weight that threatened to crush not only the body but the very soul. It was like being under the gaze of a predator who had always known you were there, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly the voice. It wasn't a whisper, nor a roar. It was a force, an idea, a silent thunder that insinuated itself directly into one's thoughts, piercing through any defenses. "You dare tread my domain, old wanderer?" The sentence was unspoken, but Gandalf heard every syllable in his mind, as if every part of his being had been invaded. Fear tried to seep in, like a silent poison. But Gandalf, accustomed to facing ancient terrors, gripped the handle of his staff and planted his feet firmly on the damp ground. Before him, the shadow thickened, a veil of smoke and darkness, contourless, yet charged with a presence impossible to ignore. The wizard felt the pressure build on his spirit, a silent challenge hurled against everything he was. There, on the border between courage and despair, Gandalf drew breath. "You are Sauron." The forbidden name echoed through the hall like a thunderbolt, shattering the absolute silence and making the very stones tremble. The shadow seemed to waver. For a brief moment, all of Dol Guldur seemed to hesitate, as if evil itself felt the weight of being unmasked. But soon the presence thickened, and the voice rang out more harshly. "Meddlesome fool, you are too late. Your fate is already sealed." A cold wind, coming from nowhere, swept through the corridor, bringing with it the smell of ash and death. The showdown was set, light against darkness, wisdom against corruption, hope against despair. Gandalf raised his staff, and a silver light shone from its tip, pushing back the shadows like smoke before a storm. The confrontation wasn't just physical. It was a battle of wills, of souls, of everything that defines good and evil. Sauron, even without a body, was an overwhelming power, a whirlwind of hatred and desire for domination that sought to envelop and destroy any vestige of resistance. But there Gandalf stood, alone, face to face with Middle-earth's ultimate enemy, and yet he did not waver. His voice, though low, was as steady as rock. "Your plans will not go unanswered. You may hide in the shadows, but there will always be a flame, even in the darkest night." The staff glowed brighter, illuminating the symbols carved into the walls, revealing chains, ancient runes, scars of dark magic. Sauron did not like the answer. The air grew heavier, and the cold almost cut through his skin. "You are bold, but you are no match for me. Your time is up." The darkness advanced, trying to drown out the light, enveloping Gandalf in a suffocating cloud of fear and doubt. For a moment, the wizard felt the weight of temptation, to let his guard down, to give in to despair, to accept defeat as inevitable. But it is at this point that Gandalf's true authority is revealed. He is not just a wizard. He is a guardian of hope, a bearer of the secret flame that shines even in the greatest danger. He thrusts his staff into the ground and causes light to burst forth, driving away the surrounding darkness, regaining his breath and mastery of space. Even when all seems lost, there will always be Someone willing to face the night. The confrontation is brief but intense. Behind the dark veil, Sauron hesitates, perhaps surprised by the strength of a simple wizard. And it is in this power struggle that the balance of Middle-earth begins to shift. The enemy for the first time realizes that their victory will not be so easy. For as long as there is resistance, even in the face of the impossible, hope does not die. Now tell me, have you ever faced a fear that seemed impossible? Something that tried to silence you or extinguish your light? Share in the comments where you're following this story from and what time it is. Perhaps your courage is ablaze like Gandalf's, shining even in the darkest hours. As the shadows of Dol Guldur recede, the true power play has only just begun. The clash between light and darkness echoes in the ancient stones, and the fortress pulses waiting for the next move, for victory doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes resistance is already a victory. The escape and the truth. Just as the confrontation reaches its climax, the shadows of Dol Guldur stir, as if the castle itself were awakening from an ancient nightmare. Gandalf, still feeling the weight of Sauron's gaze, realizes there is no more time to hesitate. Evil has recognized the invader, and the entire fortress begins to stir like a disturbed nest of serpents. Chains creaking, doors slamming, echoes of screams coming from all sides. The wizard takes a deep breath, closing his eyes for a second, and gathers his inner strength. There, in the depths, he summons the power of the secret fire, that spark that burns in his heart, since the lands beyond the sea. The tip of his staff glows with a light so bright it drives back the shadows, blinding even the eyes of evil itself. With a word of command, Gandalf unleashes a wave of energy. The chains break, the gates tremble, and the very stone of the fortress seems to vibrate with fear. The action is instantaneous. Fire mixed with magical. Light spreads through the corridors. Ancient symbols engraved on the walls burn blue and white, drawing runes of protection and destruction. The ground trembles beneath the wizard's feet as he advances, clearing his path with living flames, driving away orcs, specters, and all that try to block him. Gandalf's magic is not just strength, it is a clear message to every shadow that still insists on hiding. The light will not be extinguished easily. Amidst the chaos, Gandalf returns to fetch Thráin. The Dwarf King, however, is at his last spurt, his body already overcome by captivity and madness. Even so, there is a final gleam in his eyes, like a candle struggling not to extinguish itself. He tugs at Gandalf's tunic, whispering in a weak but meaningful voice. The map, the key, Sauron. He knows. It is the final confirmation of everything the wizard feared. It was no longer just a rumor. Evil had awakened. With tears in his eyes, Gandalf watches Thráin die there, amid the noise of the flight, without glory or grand farewells. There is no time for mourning. The wizard says goodbye, clasping his fallen friend's hand, feeling the weight of all the losses the war against darkness always exacts. Now, every second is precious. The fortress roars around him, as if to crush him before he escapes. The race for life begins. Gandalf advances through crumbling corridors, leaping over fallen stones and passing through flames licking the walls. Behind him, echoes of panicked creatures, the sounds of battle, screams of pain and hatred. Everything blends into a path of pure despair, but also of hope. The wizard knows he carries within him a dangerous truth, a burden perhaps no one else could bear. When he finally finds the secret passage he entered through, Gandalf feels the cold night wind on his face, a brutal contrast to the heat of the flames devouring Dol Guldur from within. He throws himself out, covered in soot and sweat, his heart pounding like a war drum. For a moment, lying. On the wet grass of the forest, he looks back and sees the ruins of the fortress glowing in a flickering light. It was the first open wound of the night, But the darkness had not been vanquished, only wounded. The reward for escape is bitter. Gandalf survives, but leaves bearing the burden of an indisputable truth. Sauron has returned. It was no longer council theory, nor tavern gossip. The Dark Lord walked Middle-earth again, plotting with a map, a key, and the power to raise armies. The war against darkness was no longer a distant fear. It was a living, breathing, and merciless threat. The wizard hurriedly mounts his horse, his mind still filled with images of Thráin's death and Sauron's voice echoing in the depths. He sets off north, crossing forests and darkened fields, knowing that hope now depends on warning the wise, gathering strength, preparing everyone for a danger that only he has witnessed so closely. Gandalf knows that from that moment on, every step taken in secret could be the difference between the salvation and the downfall of all that is good. Have you ever felt that mixture of relief and sadness after escaping great danger? That feeling of survival, but also of knowing the battle isn't over? Let us know in the comments where you're following this story from and when the suspense is peaking. Who knows, maybe you're also part of this silent fight against the shadows that threaten our own world. As the wizard rides into the night, carrying with him the newfound truth and the weight of loss, the stars shine brightly, as if silently observing the dawn of a new era of challenge. And in the smoking ruins of Dol Guldur, evil, though wounded, begins to plot its next move. The Council of Elven Kings. The weight of this newly discovered truth drives Gandalf through the woods of Mirkwood, like one carrying a torch on a stormy night. The wizard knows there is no more time to waste. The news of Sauron's return, Thráin's last words, and the vision of evil, lurking in the shadows, must reach the wisest and most powerful in Middle-earth. He sets out first north, crossing the sleeping forest to the hidden walls of Thranduil's kingdom. The palace, carved beneath hills and roots, glows with soft lights and watchful guards. The elves, wary, receive Gandalf with respect, but also with that ancient caution known only to an ancient people. Thranduil, the king of Mirkwood, welcomes the wizard into the hall, decorated with golden leaves, clusters of wine, and torches of cold light. His eyes, clear and impenetrable, shine with pride, but also with concern. Gandalf holds nothing back. He tells of Thráin's imprisonment and death, the theft of the map and the key, and the confrontation with Sauron's own shadow in the ruins of Dol Guldur. The hall, normally filled with music and laughter, falls silent. Elves stop working. Boughs hang in the air. Even the wind seems to hear. Thranduil soon grasps the gravity of the moment. If Sauron seeks Erebor, it is not just gold he desires. It is power over the north, over us all. His tone is calm, but already carries the weight of a difficult decision. Wasting no time, Gandalf heads west, crossing rivers and mountains to the hidden lands of Rivendell, Elrond's refuge. There, white houses gleam beneath the stars, and the sound of water flows softly between marble columns and ancient trees. Elrond, Lord of the Elves of Rivendell, listens attentively. He carries within him the time of great wars, scars that no one sees but all feel. His words weigh like stone, but his compassion is profound. Faced with this news, Elrond decides it is time to assemble the White Council, the secret alliance of the wisest and most powerful in Middle-earth. It will not be easy. Each member carries their own pain, hopes and mistrust. But faced with the threat that looms again, unity is the only choice. Galadriel, the Lady of Light of Lothlorien, is summoned. Her presence fills any room. Her gaze pierces lies and doubts. She brings with her the strength of ancient days, the hope that light can conquer any darkness. And among them all, there is Saruman the White, the most respected of the wizards, the leader of the council. His word is law among the wise. His voice can calm or inflame any argument. But as the debates progress, something begins to change. Saruman listens to the news with a restrained smile. his eyes cold as winter. He praises Gandalf's courage, but insists that Sauron is nothing more than a spectre, a shadow, nothing more. His posture of authority borders on arrogance, and between praise and advice, he slowly begins to undermine the trust of the others. Political suspense grips the council. Elrond and Galadriel exchange silent glances. The atmosphere is one of alliance, but also of distrust. Everyone knows that when great powers unite, ambitions and vanities also emerge. The final decision is firm. Dol Guldur will be watched, and the free peoples must remain alert. But the true war has not yet begun. Amid the solemn words and promises of unity, the question lingers. To what extent is everyone truly on the same side? In this landscape of power and secrecy, the presence of legendary figures like Elrond, Galadriel, and Saruman makes Middle-earth seem small, but also more vulnerable. The audience senses that, above swords and magic, it is the balance between trust and ambition that can decide everyone's fate. Have you ever witnessed a meeting where alliances and distrust coexisted? Have you ever felt that, even among friends, it's important to be vigilant so that the pride of some doesn't sabotage the collective effort? Share in the comments where you're following this story and the time in your world. Perhaps, like in Middle-earth, there are councils and alliances waiting to happen near you. As the White Council prepares to decide the future, the shadows continue to grow on the borders. The next move will be everyone's, but not everyone will play the same. Cards. The birth of a plan. Erebor. As the decisions of the White Council echo through the forests and valleys of Middle-earth, Gandalf withdraws in silence, lost in thought. The shadow of Dol Guldur still weighs heavily on him, but it is there, amidst his doubt, that an idea begins to emerge. The wizard understands that it is not enough to simply watch the enemy or wait for the next attack. It is necessary to act, and act cunningly. And everything points to a name forgotten by many. Erebor, the ancient dwarven kingdom beneath the lonely mountain. The memory of Thráin's last words still resonates in Gandalf's mind. The map, the key, the secret of a hidden entrance, and Sauron's threat over the mountain. If the Dark Lord takes Erebor, all the North will fall under his influence. There lies the crossroads of destiny, and there also lurks a danger almost as old as Sauron himself, Smaug, the dragon. No one, not elf, not dwarf, not man, dares challenge that creature alone. But Gandalf sees. Beyond fear. He realizes that to defeat Sauron, he must weaken him before his dominion expands. And to do so, Erebor must be liberated. The plan begins to take shape, to unite Thorin Oakenshield, heir to Erebor, with a band of fearless companions. But force alone is not enough. An element of surprise is needed, someone who can escape the dragon's gaze and the traps of fate. This is where the big question arises. Why a hobbit? Why place the hope of so many in the hands of someone small, unknown, with no reputation as a warrior or sorcerer? This is the curiosity that inspires Gandalf and begins to plant the same doubt in those who hear this story. Hobbits are discreet, living far from great dangers, preferring tea and comfort to battles and secret maps. But this is precisely where hope lies. Those who least desire power are those who least allow themselves to be corrupted. Gandalf, with his discerning eye, knows that the fate of the world may depend on a humble and courageous heart, one capable of resisting the temptations that have destroyed kings, wizards, and dwarves over the centuries. In the solitude of the roads, Gandalf remembers a name: Bilbo Baggins, a quiet hobbit, fond of good food, funny stories, and quiet afternoons. Bilbo would be the last to be chosen for a grand adventure. But it is from the darkness of Dol Guldur, the weight of Sauron's threat, and the memory of Thráin's suffering that the spark of a prophecy is born. The little one can change the destiny of the world. The connection between the fall of Dol Guldur and Bilbo's journey is subtle but powerful. While many believe that great deeds are accomplished by legendary heroes, Gandalf places his faith in the commonplace, precisely because small acts at the right time can create giant waves in the future. It's a silent, almost improbable hope, but one that begins to take shape. The wizard seeks Thráin, whispers his plan, speaks of the dragon, the map, the key, and a hobbit from the Shire. The prophecy is set, even if no one realizes it. A new adventure begins to unfold, woven behind the scenes of the Great War. The emergence of the plan to liberate Erebor is not just a military strategy, it is the boldest gamble in all of Middle-earth, entrusting the future to one who has no pretensions to glory, but is courageous enough to face the impossible. Have you ever witnessed someone seemingly simple surprise the world with a heroic act? Or do you know of a story where the unlikely became the protagonist? Share in the comments where you're following this story and the moment inspiration struck. Perhaps like Bilbo, you too are on the verge of an unexpected adventure. As Gandalf plants the seeds of a silent plan, far from the eyes of the dragon and the Dark Lord, the wheels of fate are already turning. The Shire, the mountain, and the heart of a hobbit are about to be united on a path that will change everything. The light's counterattack. The forests of Mirkwood still carry the thick stench of corruption. For too long, shadows have walked among the trees, suffocating the hope of the free people. But now, after meetings and councils, after decisions that changed the course of history, the time for a counterattack has come. The White Council, finally united, marches on the fortress where night never ends. Dol Guldur. The setting is one of pure suspense. Galadriel, Elrond, Saruman, and Gandalf, figures who are legends in themselves, advance together as an unstoppable force. They are not just wizards and elves. They are the very light of Middle-earth, determined to banish the darkness that has taken over that place. Galadriel shines like a full moon. Elrond carries the wisdom of ages past. Saruman is pure authority, and Gandalf, now stronger than ever, carries the flame of the secret fire within him. When the battle begins, everything becomes a cinematic image. Rays of light explode between the towers. The shadows, which seemed so powerful and ancient, dissolve. Before the combined power of the wise men, Galadriel advances like a silver storm, her presence making the walls tremble, cleansing every corner of the castle with pure energy. Elrond conjures protective spells, shielding his allies from invisible attacks. Saruman, with his thunderous voice, breaks enchantments and drives away ancient horrors, and Gandalf, amidst the chaos, leads the attacks with courage and fearlessness, wielding his staff like a beacon in the darkness. Sauron's servants flee, scream, and are lost. Orcs are swept away like dust, spectres dissolve before the light, and the very stones of Dol Guldur seem to sigh with relief. It is a partial victory, yes, but it tastes like 1,000 battles won. The rotten, fetid castle, which for so long was a sign of defeat and despair, now fills with light and hope. The rot begins to dissipate. Mirkwood feels the impact. Once dry trees bloom again, birds return timidly to their branches, and the forest folk can, for the first time in centuries, breathe without fear. But like every victory in Middle-earth, this one is not complete. At the height of the battle, when light seems to triumph, a deep chill permeates the air. Sauron, the Dark Lord, feels he has been unmasked. His presence, more an idea than a form, retreats hastily like mist drawn by the wind. He flees but does not surrender. He leaves behind signs, hints of what is to come, scrawled maps, symbols, whispered rumors in the shadows about the One Ring, the most dangerous artifact of all time. The White Council, even in the midst of the purification, realizes the gravity of the moment. The fortress has fallen, but evil has not died. Dol Guldur is free, yes, but Mordor awakens again. Sauron's gaze is no longer limited to the ruins. Now he seeks the ring, absolute power, and already prepares his next moves in the shadows. The sight is powerful, the ruined fortress bathed in light, the last shadows fleeing as if fearing the dawn, Galadriel and Gandalf, standing on the stones, feeling the weight and beauty of that bitter victory. The war has shifted, but it is not over. Have you ever been in a situation where you won a battle, but realized the real war was still ahead? Share where you're following this story from and what time it is there. The light that wins today can be the hope of tomorrow, even when darkness returns. Dol Guldur is finally cleansed, but a new challenge looms. Sauron is free, his quest begins anew, and Middle-earth breathes. Already anticipating that the greatest danger of all is yet to come. The echo of fire. In the silence that follows the battle, Gandalf feels the air change, as if all the north holds its breath, waiting for the next act. Dol Guldur, now purified by the light of the White Council, no longer spreads poison, but Middle-earth never sleeps. As the ashes of the fortress cool, a new unrest awakens far away, beneath the stone and gold of Erebor. Gandalf, a wandering wizard, surveys the transformed landscape. He senses the echo of something ancient, a fire that never dies but shifts its location. The flame that once burned hidden in the shadows of Dol Guldur now blazes within the lonely mountain. There, beneath tons of stone and centuries of stories, Smaug, the sleeping dragon, begins to stir. A muffled roar pierces valleys and rivers, causing birds to fall silent, men to close their doors, and dwarves to clench their fists in silence. The wizard realizes the real game has just begun. Standing on a hillside, Gandalf gazes at the horizon, feeling the chill of the wind and the heat of anticipation. He recalls the details few notice, the stolen map, the lost key, the relentless search for the One Ring, and the invisible thread that binds all these destinies together. He knows that every lit flame leaves an echo in the darkness, and sometimes even the smallest light can dispel the deepest night. It's a rare blend of hope and foreboding that grips the wizard. He sees, beyond the mountains and the years, the journey of a curious hobbit, possessor of deep pockets and an even braver heart. The fate of the great rings, of battles and of shadows, is about to intersect with the most unlikely adventure of all, that of Bilbo Baggins, someone who seeks no glory but who ends up touching the very center of power. The wind blows hard against Gandalf's hood. He knows the victory at Dol Guldur was just a piece moved on the board. Now, Erebor is the center of attention. Dwarves, men, elves, wizards, all look to the mountain, sensing that something immense is about to happen. Smaug will not sleep forever. Sauron, driven out but never destroyed, lurks in the distance. And among them, a hobbit, a map, and a key are the link between the past and the future. The poetry of that moment lies in its uncertainty. Evil recedes, but never disappears. Light triumphs, but always needs to be renewed, and the smallest of hearts can change the course of the world. Gandalf takes a deep breath and smiles as if guarding a precious secret. The echo of fire coming from Dol Guldur to Erebor announces that the greatest stories are made not only of battles but of courage in ordinary times. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when you felt that a small decision or a spark of hope changed everything around you? Tell us in the comments where you're following this saga from and what time it is there. Perhaps, like Gandalf, you too are the bearer of an unexpected light in the middle of the night. Middle-earth rests for a moment, but only to catch its breath. The next step will be taken by small feet on paths never before dreamed of. For the fire that burns today is only the beginning, and the adventure is about to begin again. And so ends another chapter of the shadows and secrets of Middle-earth. If you're intrigued by the mysteries of Dol Guldur, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It motivates us to bring you even more legends and epic battles. Now tell me, from which city or country are you following this journey, and what time is it there? Your participation makes all the difference in keeping the flame of these stories alive.